All right, so, we love when you send us things to, dig into, and this one really caught our eye um, from Very Well Mind. The unexpected mental health benefits of makeup. Like, okay, at first glance, you might be like, huh, but
Yeah, makeup and mental health, those two don't really seem like they go together, but
right, exactly. And that's why we're diving into this, because as we started looking into it, some pretty interesting stuff started to come up.
yeah, and I think, right off the bat, we should say that no one is saying this is like, a cure for depression or anything.
Oh, definitely not.
It's a complex issue.
Okay.
But what the article really delves into is how engaging with makeup and having a makeup routine can potentially, boost your well-being in some surprising ways, especially if you're dealing with something like depression.
Yeah, it's not just about like the final look, it's the whole process.
Exactly, the process and how that can impact you mentally and emotionally.
And the article talks about benefits that kind of go across the board, psychological, social, emotional, and even like mindfulness stuff. It's really fascinating.
It is. And I think it's also really important to reiterate what the article emphasizes. This is not a replacement for professional help.
Oh, absolutely. If you're struggling with depression, seeking therapy, and getting medical advice, that's the most important thing.
100%. That's the foundation.
Mm.
So with that said, let's dive into some of these benefits and why this article caught your eye.
Okay, so one of the first things that really stood out was this idea of a sense of control that a makeup routine can give you,
Wow, that's interesting.
right? So think about it when you're dealing with depression or anxiety.
Yeah.
You often feel really out of control of things,
Yep.
right? Like everything's chaotic and you're just kind of being swept along. And that sense of helplessness can be so overwhelming.
Absolutely.
And what the article talks about is how a structured makeup routine can actually provide some stability in all that chaos.
Okay, I see.
There's a quote from a therapist in the article, Stephanie Boucher, and she talks about how engaging in this type of predictable ritual can bring a sense of steadiness when everything else feels so uncertain.
I like that predictable ritual that really resonates because you're right. When things are feeling out of control, having something that you can count on, that you can predict, can be really grounding.
Exactly. And then Dr. Mickey Lee Alembaby, she's a clinical psychologist, and she adds to that by saying that it's a tangible way to regain a sense of control over your day.
Okay, so it's not just about the routine itself. It's about that feeling of I'm taking action. I'm doing something that has a clear beginning, a middle, and an end, and I can succeed at it.
Right. It's like a microcosm of control in this larger world that feels uncontrollable.
Right. It's not about controlling everything, but about mastering this one specific thing.
Exactly. And I think that leads really well into the next point, which is how that feeling of agency, even from something small like a makeup routine, can actually boost your self-esteem.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There's a social worker quoted in the article, Jillian Amodio, and she talks about how self-care routines in general, including makeup, can actually help reconnect us with that really basic human desire to, look and feel good.
We all have that desire,
Mm.
right? It's not superficial. It's really fundamental.
Totally. And Amodio goes on to explain that when we take the time to focus on ourselves with care and attention, even a little bit of appreciation, sends a message to our brains like, hey, I'm worth this effort. I'm worth this time.
It's like a little affirmation you're giving yourself through action.
Exactly. And that can build over time, right? Those little actions build up to a stronger sense of self-worth.
I can see that for sure. And it's interesting because the article also touches on how makeup can be a form of creative expression.
Oh, yeah. There was a quote that really stuck with me from Stephanie Boucher again. She says, creativity allows for emotional release without words. And I was like, wow, that's so true.
It is. We don't always have healthy ways to express our emotions, and sometimes words just aren't enough.
Right. And makeup can be such a fun and low pressure way to tap into that creativity, like trying different colors, textures, techniques.
Absolutely. And Amodi points out that it can be a form of self-expression, even if you're just doing it at home for yourself.
Yeah. It's like your own little art project.
Exactly. And I think the important thing there is that it can be a distraction from those negative thought patterns that can come with depression. Just getting lost in the process of creating something.
Right. And there's no pressure to be good at it or to show it to anyone. It's just for you.
And then the article goes on to talk about how a makeup routine can actually lead to improved social interactions. And I was like, wait, how does that work?
I know, right?
Yeah.
It seems counterintuitive.
Yeah, because makeup feels like such a personal thing.
Yeah.
But Dr. Alembaby suggests that when you feel more put together, more prepared, it can actually reduce self-consciousness in social situations.
Okay, that makes sense. If you feel good about how you look,
Mhm.
you're less focused on your appearance and more present in the interaction.
Right. And Amodio adds that makeup trends can actually be a really good icebreaker or a common ground to connect with people.
Oh, it's interesting, especially if you're feeling like you have low motivation or social anxiety. It's like
Mm.
a neutral topic, a shared interest.
Exactly. It can be a way to kind of ease into social interaction.
And then shifting gears a bit, the article also dives into the mood-boosting potential of a makeup routine, and this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, this is where it starts to connect with some of the core ideas behind treating depression.
Right, so Dr. Celeste Simmons describes depression as often involving this really critical inner voice.
Yep.
Negative thoughts about yourself, the world, the future.
That inner critic can be so loud.
It really can, and it makes it hard to stay present and have a positive outlook.
That's where this idea of behavioral activation comes in.
Right? Dr. Simmons explains that it's about intentionally engaging in activities that are either meaningful or pleasurable, even when you really don't feel like doing them.
So it's about taking action even when your motivation is low.
Exactly. And the interesting thing is that a makeup routine can actually fit into this behavioral activation framework.
Really? How so?
Well, Dr. Alembaby points out that the very act of applying makeup can actually activate your brain's reward system. And that can lead to the release of mood-boosting neurotransmitters like dopamine.
Dopamine, that feel-good chemical.
Right. And think about it. You complete a step in your routine, even something small, and it triggers a tiny release of dopamine. It reinforces that sense of accomplishment and positivity.
It's like your brain is giving you a little reward for taking care of yourself.
Exactly. And there's this great anecdote in the article from a business owner named Channing Meller, and she talks about this concept of take the extra 5, meaning taking an extra 5 minutes to focus on personal grooming.
That's a great idea. I like that.
Yeah, and she noticed that it wasn't just about how she looked, it was about the act of self-care and how it positively impacted her mood and confidence.
So again, it's not about vanity. It's about intentionally doing something for yourself that makes you feel good.
And the article also delves into this idea of mindful application, which I thought was fascinating.
Mindful application, how does that work with makeup?
Well, mindfulness, as you know, is about being present in the moment, right?
Yeah.
Observing your thoughts and feelings without judgment.
Right. It's about noticing what's happening without getting carried away by it.
Exactly. And Stephanie Boucher explains that the slow, measured steps of a makeup routine, the repetition, can actually encourage you to be present in that moment.
Because you're focused on the details, the colors, the textures, the sensations.
Right. And when you're focused on those things, there's less mental space for those anxious or depressive thoughts.
Mm.
It can have a calming effect.
I can see that it's like a form of meditation in a way.
And there's a quote from an aromatherapist and medical esthetician, Shanna Bynes Bradford, and she describes her makeup routine as therapy because it helps her focus and quiet her mind.
Wow, that's powerful.
It really is. And it speaks to how something seemingly mundane can actually be a tool for mental well-being.
And this kind of naturally leads into the next concept, that the article explores a makeup routine as a grounding technique.
Okay, so remind me, what is grounding again?
Grounding is a set of techniques that help you focus on something tangible to manage overwhelming thoughts and feelings.
So instead of getting lost in your head, you're bringing yourself back to the present.
Exactly, and Morgan DeLeo, a therapist in the article, points out that the sensory experience of applying makeup, the feel of the brushes, the visual act of seeing the colors blend, can really stimulate that sense of presence.
It's anchoring you in the here and now.
Exactly, and the structure of a routine, the predictability can also act as mental anchors throughout the day.
Right. It's something you can count on a constant in a world that feels unpredictable.
So for someone listening who's like, okay, this is all interesting, but how do I actually incorporate this into my life? The article offers some really practical tips.
Yeah, because it can feel overwhelming to think about starting a whole new routine, especially if you're struggling with low motivation.
So Modio suggests starting small, maybe just one product to ease into it.
I think that's manageable.
And DeLeo adds that keeping that product somewhere easily accessible can make a big difference.
Makes sense. The easier it is, the more likely you are to do it.
Right. And Modio also says to keep the routine simple, focus on the experience. How do you feel? What are the scents, the textures? It's not about a complicated multi-step process.
It's about enjoying the process itself.
Exactly.
Right.
And she even suggests using those hybrid makeup products like a tinted lip balm with SPF or a multi-use cream stick to streamline things.
Fewer steps, less overwhelming.
And then DeLeo brings up this idea of habit stacking, which I love.
Habit stacking, what's that?
It's basically linking a new habit to an existing one. So, for example, applying your concealer right after you brush your teeth.
Well, that's a good idea.
Yeah, you're attaching it to something you already do automatically, so it's more likely to stick.
It's like sneaking it into your routine.
Exactly. And finally, Amodio suggests pairing your makeup routine with other uplifting activities like listening to affirmations, doing a short meditation, or putting on a favorite podcast.
So it becomes this little self-care ritual.
Precisely. It's about creating a positive experience around the activity.
So to sum it all up, the big takeaway from this article is that a makeup routine can be a really accessible and creative outlet with some real potential benefits for mood and self-esteem, especially for people who are dealing with depression.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember, as the article emphasizes, it's not about achieving some perfect look. It's about the feeling you get while you're engaging in the routine.
That's such an important distinction.
It is, and we need to say again, this is not a substitute for professional treatment.
Right. If you're struggling with depression, please reach out for help.
100% seeking professional support is crucial.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with something to think about. What's one small sensory-focused activity in your life that you might usually rush through? Maybe it's the smell of your coffee, the feel of the sun on your skin, or the sound of your favorite song.
That's a great idea.
Try taking a few extra moments to really engage with that sensation. Notice how it makes you feel. Maybe it'll have a subtle positive impact on your mental state. Who knows?
It's all about exploring those little things that can bring us joy and peace.
Exactly. All right, that's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for sharing this article. This was a good one.
Yeah, this was really interesting.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time.
See ya.